And the tradition continues. It's another episode of Swing Thoughts. As always, I'm golf spiritual leader for no other reason than I decided I would be. No one else wanted to be. No one else was in a big hurry to take all the sorrow and woes and the slings and arrows that golf can throw and accept it on behalf of golf. I know it seems a bit over the top, but whatever. And of course, as always, our friend and mentor, Coach Tim O'Connor, o'connorgolf.ca. What's up there, my friend?
Oh, I was just wondering. I was reading some Joseph Campbell stuff yesterday. The academic who was an authority on all things myth-like. And I was just wondering, when you took on the mantle of GSL, golf spiritual leader,
yes,
was there a chorus of 25,000 angels? Or I'm just wondering, or did you just decide one morning that you were GSL? I'm just wondering if there was like an enlightenment sort of aura or something.
Tim, I can tell by the nature of your question that you're not ready to ascend. Here's the thing. If you have to ask those questions, you're just not ready yet. Anyway, welcome everybody. Got a lot of feedback, great feedback the last few weeks as we once again mine the depths of golf's ups and downs and talk about the season where it's the 2nd of July as we record this. Happy Canada Day to everyone who celebrates. And it's great to be part of this program that is part of this great game in this country that the last week or so has been easily the best golf weather of the season. And it's funny because our mutual friend, Ken Osborne, and I were talking about this the other day. We played on Monday. And we were playing in shorts and drinking water. And I was talking about some of the rounds he and I have played competitively together. We had one qualifier about a month and a half ago. It was like 6 degrees and raining sideways. And I had long johns on. And we sat in the car just before we got into the parking lot of the golf course. And I said, do you really want to do this? Do we really? We're combined 130 years old. Do you really want to get out of this car and go try this bullshit? And we did, anyway. But now it's nice.
Certainly is. I mean, it's great if you like losing weight and whatnot. You can lose like 5-6 pounds of water weight, and But it's fun. I like being really hot in the summer. It's like a cleansing. It's like all the toxins come out of my pores, and I don't get to GSL level though. But
Well, I know you and your son played golf a couple of days ago, I believe. And
Corey and I.
The difference in how your fascia reacts, how your body moves, and how, it's like, it's one of the reasons I love hot yoga, because it just makes it seem like you're more, especially at 65, just makes you seem like you're more pliable than you really are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've played with guys with, the proverbial bad back. They get that, out on the first tee, had bad sleep, dog threw up, and I got a bad back. But when it's nice and hot, they seem to be just kind of, they're able to get going.
All right. Well, speaking of getting going, today's guest is one of our favorites, one of the most respected minds in the mental game of golf. Karl is a performance coach who's worked with 6 major champions and over 100 tour professionals, LPGA, PGA, DP World Tour. He's the creator of the Mind Factor program and host of the popular Brain Booster podcast, The Lost Art of Golf, The Lost Art of Putting, The Lost Art of the Short Game. He's authored other books as well. And whether you're a tour player or a weekend warrior, Karl's insights into focus, routine, and pressure are game changers. And now that we know what he looks like in person, let's welcome back to our program, Dr. Karl Morris. Hello, Coach. What's up?
Hi, Howard. Hi, Tim. It's great to see you again. It was just over a week since we had that memorable dinner together. I finally got to meet GSL in person. I said to Tim, I didn't know whether to sort of bring some beads or some flowers or something like that, as I got some chance to meet the GSL.
Yeah, well,
it was a momentous moment.
When I walked in, I was so happy to see you, but I was like, it's funny because we've known each other for 10 years, and I've only ever seen you on a Zoom call, and you're like way bigger in person. then I was like, I wasn't expecting this giant of a man. But what a great conversation. We sat down and we're like old friends. And within minutes, we learned a couple things. One, Tim swears way more in person. We learned that.
Let it go. Let it
We
go,
learned
man.
that. And then we had this discussion. We weren't even talking golf. All of a sudden, it was like the C word, religion. Very little to do with golf, but it was such a great night. And hope you enjoyed your time here in Toronto.
It was fabulous, Howard. Yeah, I had a really Andrew Lovell hosting me at Toronto Golf Club, and what a fantastic facility that is. What a great golf course and practice areas, training areas, and just the warmth I got from people was phenomenal. And then we went to St George's, again, great facility, and Mad River. As I was saying before we started, what a fantastic name for a golf course. In the UK, we just tend to call courses like Wigan and Bury and places like that. But I mean, what a great name for a golf course.
Yeah, with the courses, compare the conditions of what you saw in terms of like, I don't know, those are some pretty high level courses you played in terms of what are the conditions like of those courses compared to the ones back home for you?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the condition that the courses were in, Tim. I mean, as soon as I went up the driveway there at Toronto Golf Club, and I found out that it was designed by Harry Colt, really obviously well-known English designer, and I used to work at it, or I used to be attached to a Harry Colt course, and they're really quite distinctive in the way that they're sort of set out with the bunkering and things like that. So straight away, it kind of reminded me of that. But no, I mean the conditioning of the course and the way it was just immaculate, really, and that was the sort of impression that I got. And then the drive up north to Mad River, it was up there was just being up in the north was just a great sense of peace and freedom and quiet and calm and all the opposite things to what we get in normal life, really.
Yeah,
Nice.
is Mad River, Tim? It's Stainer, isn't it?
Stainer, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So
yeah,
it's on the way up to Cottage Country. It's
yeah.
gorgeous up there.
Oh, I played it once. It's a one hell of it. It's a tough golf course,
Yeah.
a lot of up and down, and small greens for a course like that. You'll be tested on your GUR up there.
So we know what you were
GIR.
doing. Yeah, we know. Yeah, there's no ground under repair. We know what you were doing, but just give the audience some sense of, you come to a city like Toronto, you spend 3 or 4 days at a couple different courses. Were your workshops open to the public, or were they for professionals, or a combination of both?
Yeah, Andrew organized on the first day. We did a day for pros, which was great, comparing notes about how challenging it is to coach this game, and then we spent time with the members at the other clubs. And I suppose the primary focus, which maybe we can have a conversation about, because I know it's dear to all our hearts, really was to really kind of drill into the difference between a training mindset and a playing mindset. And the more I've looked at it over the years, it really is such a different set of skills. And curiously, over the last couple of years, this crazy thing has had an impact on a lot of players, where I get them to sort of see it as the engineer and the driver. There's all kind of metaphors that you can use, but you literally change hats. I've had guys wearing different color caps depending on which mode that they're in. So if they're wearing the blue hat, they're on a certain part of the range and they're working on mechanics, they're working on the golf swing, because to ignore that is ridiculous. The idea that it's just all in the mind is a nonsense. You've got to improve your impact conditions, clearly. But then go into different locations, put in another hat on, and exploring what it is that you need to do to then access those skills and get more into a playing mindset. And I think the more that we can create those distinctions and the more coaching goes in that direction, I think the better people will then be able to perform. Because unfortunately, at the moment, most of it just tends to mesh one into the other, and we find it really, really difficult to get away from, I hit it well on the range and I hit it poor on the golf course, feel good on the range, feel bad on the course, go back to the range, feel good, go back to the course, feel bad. And there's sort of endless loop that can take anything from 2 weeks to 30 years.
So when you say training mindset, are you saying so someone's trying to master a certain shot or quote fix a bad shot. So are you saying that in the training mindset, people come to the golf course and they're still thinking, I need to do this with my right elbow and this is my left knee, and that doesn't lead to good play on the course?
No, what I was meaning with the training mindset, Tim, was that you know, working with a coach ideally, that you kind of understand what your patterns are, what patterns are coming out with your shots, what tendencies are there, and being able to manage that. So that, you know, there clearly is a time to work on what's happening at impact, and maybe some of the movements that you make are influencing that. So have that distinction that there is a time and a place for that, but then
Mhm.
where do we go? How do we go? What shift do we make to go into then a playing mindset if we're on the range? And obviously, we want to be taking that playing mindset out on the golf course. And I think then it comes down to, you know, if there is a holy grail with this, it's this sort of understanding that, you know, the golf swing takes 1.2 seconds around about. But that 1.2 seconds, which is just a click of the fingers in linear time, that's an eternity for the mind. And in the sense that when we get out on the golf course, very often what happens is that we can't hold our attention in that 1.2 seconds in one place, because we've trained it to jump around. We've trained it to think about the elbows and the shoulders and this and yada, yada, yada. And we get on the golf course. And if the mind's jumping around, if it's not in a place of, I call it the one point, if it's not in a one point of focus, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to be able to access your skills. You see, the big thing is that virtually everybody gets a sense that they have a certain level of skill, but I don't think there's many people who are actually accessing that skill on the golf course. I've
Right.
probably had half a dozen conversations in 35 years where people say I hit it better on the golf course than I do on the range. Now and again you get people saying that, but in the main, there's a sense of I'm better in practice, I'm better in the training environment than I am on the golf course. And
Well, if I can just jump in, because I wanted to get back to the idea of changing hats or changing focus. So I think most people listening would understand what a person might do to train skills of a physical nature. But the holy grail, I think, maybe you would disagree or agree, is to find a way to train effectively to take that to the golf course. So how do we train that?
well, we would train it if we were on the range.
Yes.
We would change. Even I would changing locations. I think is important. As crazy as that sounds, that you've had one station for the technical work, go to
Right.
a different part of the range, change the hats metaphorically or the glove or whatever it is. It just seems these spatial anchors, these sort of physical things of right. I'm now going from engineer to driver. So we would then get much more into, you know, just an obvious one would be 9 different shots to 9 different locations with 9 different clubs. And, you know, I have a game where I'll get people to grade each shot between 1, 2, and 3. One would be a good shot, two would be good enough, and three would be a poor. So you start to then create a scenario, unique challenge, different location, different
Got it.
target. And now there's an accountability to that. What was the standard of the shot relative to the target line?
Right. It's almost like block training for your mind.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you know, this idea of seeing it as a skill to shift from one mindset to another, I don't think we give enough credit to that. You know, we're developing physical skills, hopefully, but can we have the mental capacity to shift from one kind of focus to another kind of focus? You know, it's a clunky metaphor, but in Formula One, there'd be guys working on the car's engine in the garage, getting everything ready. But once they get out on the track, the driver hopefully is only going to focus on one thing, which is what's in front of him, the
Hmm.
challenge in front of him. And that's something then that the more you start to think this way, then you go out on the golf course and you start to listen to the golf course. The golf course is always asking you a bunch of questions, but if you're not tuned into those questions, you know, I liken it to sort of sitting down trying to do a crossword and you're getting distracted all the time. You're never going to be able to answer the puzzle in front of you if you're
Right.
always being distracted. And most times we go on the golf course and we're distracted by our mind, which is searching for technical answers to questions that may be very different. You know, there was a guy on my podcast last week, Randy Joyner, and it's breath of fresh air, good top player, really great coach. He's having some amazing results with players, and he says to his players, let's look at the golf swing last. Let's look at other things that may be causing your shots to go offline. What's the preparation like? What are you trying to do with the golf ball? What shape are you trying to hit it? Where's your focus? And ultimately, we're not ignoring the golf swing, but Christ, we've spent 50 years, golf swing has been front and center of everything. And it's not everything. It's a part of a puzzle, and we need to look at the whole puzzle.
It seems so, Karl. You and I, GSL, other people, Fred Shoemaker, have been talking about this general topic for a while. It still feels like, kind of, as you would say, pissing in the wind in terms
Yeah.
of the golf culture.
Yeah.
Do you see any shift at all happening? I hear a few coaches, but I still, in the golf culture, pretty well every person who comes to me, we're going to go, I want to become more consistent. That's the number one thing. I understand that. And it's like, tell me what I'm doing wrong in my swing. So it still feels like, like pushing against this tsunami to say there's a different way to do this, but it's certainly a hard message to get across.
I see a shift, Tim, but in the wrong direction. It's going more in that direction, if anything, that, we've got more and more information, more and more Instagram, more and more YouTube videos, all that kind of stuff. And we live in a very we live in a very aesthetic society, don't we? We like things to look nice. We like things to look neat. We like symmetry. We like golf swings to look good. Everybody would love to make a golf swing like Adam Scott. Everybody would like to look like Adam Scott, but that's not for everybody. It's about finding a way of getting the golf ball around the golf course. Back to what I've said before, the golf course is asking you a series of questions. Depending on your level of ability, it'll ask you between 60 and 100 questions. Now, the way you answer those questions is by shots. You create shots to answer the question that the golf course is providing of you. And if we're not at some level starting to shift into shots, I think we've probably had this conversation 50 times, but I think more coaches, instead of being swing coaches, they should be shot coaches, because
Yes.
at the end of a round, they don't ask you how many swings you've made. They ask you how many shots you've hit.
Well, I had to tell you, I love that. And I love what you said about, focusing on the golf swing last. I've mentioned this character on this show a bunch of times. The guy that I've worked with the longest, his name is Paul Henrik, former tour player, very strange approach to coaching. And how he coaches me is he never, ever tells me anything about positions or where my club is at a certain point. We talk about setup, and we talk about setup as it relates to the shots that we're trying to learn to hit. And so when I practice now, and I've mentioned this on the show a bit, when I practice now, yeah, sure, it's making sure that I've got my alignment stick there, I'm aimed in the right, aimed correctly. But after that, it's like practicing the shots that I might need that day. If it's windy, I want to how's my low punch 5-iron working? How can I choke down on my driver and hit a little bit of a lower flight? So he has me practicing shots, and the swing, like Mo said this famously, his swing balanced him. That's how Mo Norman felt his golf swing. Well, there's a whole different take on the golf swing. If you're trying to hit a soft draw, your body will organize it. And you always say that the course asks you questions, and in the answer is what that develops the golf swing for that shot.
And then you come to, Howard, then maybe the fundamental question, does the shot create the swing, or does the swing create the shot? Now, I'm not saying there's a definitive answer to this, and we've got to learn some fundamental movement skills to understand path and face and setup and all that kind of good stuff. But I think once you've got to a certain level and a certain capability, it's the shot that creates the swing.
Absolutely.
And if the shot creates the swing, you can start asking different questions, because the question you can ask is, what's wrong with my shots? Now, if you're asking the question, what's wrong with my shots, it's too high, it's too low, it's too much right to left, too much left to right. If you ask the question, what's wrong with my swing, good luck with sifting through the answer to that one.
But what you said there, and this is what Paul and I have talked about this, most people, though, They think of it as like, okay, I'm gonna practice this swing, and then when I get on the golf course, I'm gonna swing this thing to hopefully go in that direction. But that's not what the golf course is asking you to do. The lie's uneven, the ball's above your feet, it's a left to right wind. Can you hold off that 7-iron into it? That creates, and I don't even know. It's funny because I specifically, I don't know about other people, but I have really stopped the last month looking at my swing on video because I find that rabbit hole. It's like, it's like I think there's two things you should never watch yourself do, and one of them is swing a one of them is swing a golf club, and the other one is what I'm talking about, boys. No one needs to see that. But I also think that Shoemaker, O'Connor, Morris, there's a freedom in that. There's a freedom in the execution of a shot versus trying to make the swing that you've been working on. To transport that robotic movement around a golf course is why, I know personally why I would get frustrated, because when a shot doesn't come off, there's a feeling of, hey, it didn't come off, but there was a satisfaction in trying it.
Yeah, exactly.
It has a different feel to it.
Yeah. What I think often happens is that we lose the thread. Actually, we lose the whole objective of golf generally is to send this white ball to a target. That's the objective. Yeah. So if you're focused on your swing, as you said, Karl, you're focused on the wrong damn thing. It's all about it. Never mind what your swing was like. Did you execute based on your intention to get this ball to the target? And so where I want to go with that and ask you, Karl, is that, we talk on this podcast, you have an app called Mind Caddy, it's all this mind stuff. But to me, when we're hitting a golf shot, it's more of a physical act. It's like, there's the target. We have a tool. We're going to transfer some energy through this ball towards a target. And yeah, we need to be aware of the decisions we make, the mental state we're in. But ideally, I think when trying to meet the objective, it's a physical act. So I don't know. That was a lot there. What do you?
Yeah. To me, you're right on the mark with it, Tim, in the sense that golf, when it's done well, becomes a physical sport. It's a physical ball, physical body. We just in a way we make it far too mental. That we get so much in our heads. But I think two things really and we had discussed this when we had dinner, and I think there's a degree of honesty with it. That number one, on the upside, is that our bodies are an incredible piece of machinery, a product of billions of years of evolution. And part of that evolution has been moving objects to targets. As a survival mechanism, we've got this incredible capacity to throw things and move things. That's on the one side of it. But on the other side, and I think this is where the golf industry, we need to start being a little bit more honest with this, is that if you look at your golf swing, you can either look at it in a macro sense or a micro sense. So a macro sense would be you're looking at the sort of bigger movements of the body, the sort of pivot and all that kind of stuff. Now, unfortunately, and this is not easy to digest for a lot of folk, is that if you're going to try and change fundamental movement patterns, you need to be in there for the long haul, and you need to realize what that's going to take to make any kind of change whatsoever in the way that you move your body. Because fundamental movement patterns require countless repetitions, probably in front of a mirror, thousands of slow swings, lots and lots of shots without a ball or foam balls. That's a hell of a thing to take on. And if you're prepared to do that and stick with it, great. And for young players trying to develop effective movement, I think that's a great route to go down, especially in the winter time. But for the vast majority of people who play this game, most of us who don't have unlimited time to play, we can't really change much of those macro movements. The fundamental movement pattern is pretty well established. What you can change and what you can influence is the micro movement, i.e. what the club is doing through impact, and start to get more in tune with what the golf club is doing. To your point, Tim, we can have some influence on that. I did a bunch of drills with the guys when I was over there, and a couple of them said to me, it can't be that simple, can it? And I said, well, I said it's up to. I said it's up to you. I said, one guy, I said, I said, I said, how long have you been working on your swing? And he said, well, over 20, he said, 20 years I've been working on this golf swing. And I said, chances are, if you've been going down this route for 20 years, the 21st year is probably not going to make the year that makes much difference.
That's right. But that's great. Then, is there anything more hopeful than golfers thinking about their golf swing? Before I want to get to Mind Caddy because I've got a lot of questions about this, and it's an amazing app that Karl's developed. But just briefly before we do, I just want to say that and I know this from being a frustrated golfer for years, when you're so golf swing centric in terms of the thing you're working on, the thing you saw on Instagram, the thing your coach talked, and the shot doesn't come off, there's a frustration. There's a different kind of frustration, as in I failed to be able to make this movement. When I've got an iron from the field and it doesn't quite come off, but I've tried to do something with it. It's funny how my reaction to that is always like, it didn't come off, but I don't question my golf swing. I question, did I do the thing I was trying to do? Did I hold the face open? It's all very specific. It's not like, oh shit, now I thought that thing that was working on the range was going to work in every way around the golf course. It's I just find the frustration level. Sure, if the shot doesn't come off, it's a drag, but it's a different kind of reaction when you're trying to answer the questions. Yeah. Let's talk about this. Mind Caddy is a sports. It's an app. It's a sports psychology tool. So let's talk about what was the inspiration for it? What is it, and how does it differ from other sort of online, mind psychology apps?
I mean, it's been out for a good few years now. We've been sort of 5 years in the journey, and initially different programs on there, more effective training as we're talking about, transfer, all that kind of stuff. But the thing that we're really excited about now is the AI version. Now, with the best will in the world, most people are not going to get a chance to the availability to come over and see me in the UK and all the cost that entails. But we've got the AI version now, whereby, and it blows my mind.
This is AI, Karl?
This is AI, Karl. This is AI, Karl, where everything that I've ever done or said has been fed into this thing, and you answer it. You ask it a question, and it'll give you an answer to your personal question based on all the stuff that I've ever done, and I've tested it out. Well, we've tested it out, and I'm thinking, my God, that's that's what I would have said. And it's like the worst bit though is when my wife sort of started using it. She said it was far better than the original version because at least it asked the questions.
Does it remember to pick up eggs and milk on the way home?
That's right. So who is this for? What kind of golfer is this for? Is it for just elite players, the club golfer? Is it going to be good for everybody?
I think I mean, if you're a total beginner or in the very early stages of your golf, it's more about developing your swing skills, your shot skills. But I think anybody who's been playing for a while, if you've got that frustration of not being able to transfer your skills, it's worth looking at because, as you say, you can ask it personal questions. You can ask it personal questions about what you're struggling with in particular during the round, how to practice better. So, we've had a bunch of people start using the AI, and it's the reports back are really, really, really encouraging. So, chances are it'll make me redundant eventually, but maybe that's the right plan.
Can you walk us through so it's called Mind Caddy. It's an app you can download, available, I'm assuming, for Android and the iPhone. Apple. So and is it a subscription? Do you download it for free and then you can buy into different programs?
Yeah, you can test it out for nothing. You can give it a trial, and there's the sort of entry level where you get the programs that are on there, and then just for a little bit more, and it's not a lot more. It's less than the price of most golf lessons really these days. That you can get the AI version for 12 months, and you can just ask it as many questions as you want, and you can just use it in whatever way you want, and it saves the answers, so you build up a file. And it does. The good thing about it is that it begins to ask you questions. So you'll ask it a question, it'll give you an answer, and then it'll also ask you questions, which is really quite interesting.
So how would you see most people using this?
I would see them using it where you go and play golf. You may be on the golf course. I mean, I wouldn't recommend having your phone with you actually on the course, but if you do and you're practicing, you could ask it key things about what's happening out there in the round. But I would think the time you would use it would be after a round and you're reflecting on the chaos that's just ensued. And if nothing else, after that chaotic round where things haven't gone well, I think it allows you to create some closure on the day and get some reflections that allow you to move on. It'll give you a plan of action for whatever's just happened, how to move forward.
Does it have a lot of your verbal quirks and things like that? Your personality come through in that?
I think, as my wife said, it's probably an enhanced version of me, which is
Karl, I just want to, because you work with tour players and with major winners, I always like to get, while we have time with you, to connect with what people have watched on tour and whatnot. And so last week we saw, I'm not sure I'll get the pronunciations right, Max Greiserman is his name,
Yeah.
and Potgieter. Aldrich Potgieter. So they went into it seems to be a bunch of playoffs these days that are going on and on. This one went, I think, 4 holes until the South African one. But Greiserman is, I think it was his 4th time he was like close to winning. Potgieter beat him. When players come that close, they graze the hole in a playoff or they just miss, down the stretch. We talked about this a little bit at dinner. How do they keep going? Is it that they have a belief system in themselves? Do they have to just kind of come off the course and, yeah, they feel the sting of losing, but how do players like that keep going without, crashing or, getting caught in a story? When will I ever be able to do this? Come on.
I think it's a relevant question, Tim. With we discussed, I've worked with Ryan Fox for 6 or 7 years, and we speak pretty much every week. And within that time, a couple of tournaments, a couple of years ago in Europe, he could quite easily have won six tournaments. A couple of them went to playoff, and one in particular, he played great in the playoff. But this guy, Victor Perez, to his great credit, I think Victor holed over 100 feet of putts in 4 holes of a playoff. I mean, it was just off the charts. And Fox has got a great mentality, really, in the sense that he's a realist. And we chatted about it, and I said, how many things would you have done differently? And he'd actually played great in the playoff, and he said, I wouldn't have done an awful lot differently. Sometimes the golfing gods just say no. And if you look, then this year he's been in 2 playoffs, and the golfing gods have said yes. At Myrtle Beach, he chipped in on the first playoff hole, and obviously the RBC Canadian Open, Sam Burns missed that short putt on the first, and Ryan got pretty lucky on one of the approach shots he played when he spooned that rescue wood up, and it should have perhaps ended up in the water, and he got a bit lucky with that, but. It's a Fred Shoemakerism, which we always at some point come back to Fred in these discussions. But this concept, maybe the most important question of all that I've used so much, got it from Fred, is this idea that the next shot that you play, is it possible it could be a good shot?
Mm-hmm.
And the bottom line is, at every single level, whatever your definition at your level of a good shot is, it is possible. It might have been a pile of crap beforehand, but it is possible that the next shot could be a good one. Yeah. And I think this is something we talk with Ryan a lot about, is that the only thing that shuts down the possible is stories, is your own stories, that it's not my day, or I don't deserve this, or I'm not lucky, or this, or whatever it is. It's the stories that shut the possible down. So I think getting better. I think I've last number of years with players just not necessarily try to stop the stories, because the stories will keep coming, but is just get better at noticing the stories. That there's the story again. Oh, I'm unlucky, or this always happens to me, or any of the other BS that we come up with. No, okay. This shot, is it possible it could be a good one? Is it possible I could hit the green? Is it possible I could hold a putt?
I've been lucky, as you two have, but I've been around some tour players, and I've got a chance to play, a couple of rounds with them, and played with a lot of very good players. And I think the biggest difference, and I think that the average amateur doesn't get this, we think the biggest difference between us and them is that they are highly skilled, and somehow they were ordained, DNA-wise,
Yeah, exactly.
to be
Golf
just
gods
better.
sprinkled on them.
But
Yeah.
but I think one of the things that good players, elite amateurs, and pros do that a lot of higher handicap players don't do is just that. They don't have the perspective in the moment to say, is it possible that even though I've had a shit front nine or whatever the story was, or I made a bunch of high numbers, is it possible that this next series of shots could be the best of my life? The thing is, that's what pros and good players feel like. I think they're just better at dismissing what went on and embracing what might happen. I've told this story dozens of times where I play with this guy at my course. He's a decent player, single digits, 5, 6, 7. But every time he has a double bogey or a triple bogey early in the round, I used to hear him say this, well, there goes the day. And I say to him, there goes the day. We've been out here for 45 minutes. Like, we've got 14 holes to go. That's the difference is, I look at it like this is the chance to be 2 under for the next 14 holes. Whereas a lot of people go, well, they think there goes the day, and there goes the day. If you believe that, would you not agree? Then the day is done.
Can I tell a story on that? Am I allowed to swear like Tim at some point?
Yeah, maybe not. Could you keep the swearing down to my level, not this street hooligan that is developed into my co-host. Anyways, what's your story?
So
I
the
have to
guy,
go to confession or something. I go to see my priest. Something.
Yeah, well, whatever you do when you go
need
to
to
see
be
your priest,
absolved here.
Come on, don't swear in front of him. Anyways, go ahead, Karl.
this guy a couple of years ago, an amateur player, and he took the game seriously, and I'd have phone calls with him, and he'd literally be in tears about a round of golf that he played, and he's quite a successful guy, and everything was good in his life apart from his golf that was torturing him. And I remember we arranged to go to his golf course, and he's played the first hole, and he's at a decent tee shot, knocked it onto the green to about 20 feet, and he's rolled it down to 4 feet. And he's at this awful putt, and he's missed the 4-footer for par. And he just looks at him. He goes, that's it. He said, the day is fucking over. And I just thought,
Exactly.
what are you doing to yourself that you create such a story that you've missed a 4-foot putt that everybody does from time to time, and in your head the day's over. That's a perfect example, though, of shutting down the possible with a story.
Well, the other thing that I think that, speaking of, I'm going to go back to counterintuitive. Our society, particularly, the networks, they have a PGA Tour event. They're trying to create a story, draw the audience in. Just media's creating a story, but there's all this emphasis. Again, it's going to sound completely counterintuitive. There's way too much emphasis placed on winning.
Yeah,
it's all about winning. And if you don't win, well, you're a loser, or you didn't live up to your potential, or whatever story you want to come up with. And I'll just remember Payne Stewart. I remember I was covering the U.S. Open in, I think it was '93, and at the time, I don't think he'd won yet. He was one of those guys who had all this promise, but he'd not yet to win his majors, and he just said, I just got to keep knocking on that door, and one of these days it will open. Yeah. He just seemed to have that. But again, we have these stories come at us that you got to win. But like Glassman, his putts just grazed the hole. Yeah. Does that make him not? That makes him a loser, not a guy.
Well, no. I mean, and famously, people forget this because he's a Hall of Famer now, but in the early to mid 70s, Tom Watson was famous for not getting it done, not, going through the door, whatever it was. And he just stayed, I think it's a bit of a belief in yourself. And I think that's what also elite players and tour players have that the rest of us don't have as much of, which is the belief that if I just keep doing this, like Max Greiserman, I'm sure he was disappointed, but what could he have done? He literally almost won that thing 3 of those 4 holes. Tom Watson, was considered a bit of a choker. He blew a few tournaments, but he was a kid in his mid-20s. Then all of a sudden, the Duel in the Sun in 1977, he became Tom Watson. But people forget that at one time he was struggling to get it done because there's a learning curve to it.
But again, it just depends on the story that we tell afterwards, don't we? I mean, it's been interesting with, we've all discussed endlessly Rory's win in the Masters, but it's intrigued me about the stories afterwards that, one shot one way and he beats Justin Rose in a playoff. Fantastic. He's now in the Hall of Fame. He's won all 4 majors. Incredible achievement. One shot this way, and the story is about this incredible mental resilience of winning the Grand, or getting into the Grand Slam club. What about one shot the other way? Yeah. One shot the other way where Justin Rose wins. What would the story have been then? It would have been that Rory capitulated, he's mentally weak, all this kind of stuff, all this, again, BS would have been all over the press. And we just lose the sense of proportion of what it all is. There's so many factors. I mean, look at Tommy Fleetwood in the week before, and that put on the last where it seemed to hit something and it gets knocked offline. And the golfing gods said no at that point to Tommy Fleetwood for whatever reason. Does that make him a loser? No, it doesn't.
But I think, Karl, the average player listening, and we'll start to wrap this up with people that play once or twice, I think they do the same thing when they're assessing their own play. I mean, I do it. One of the things, I would say that I'm a victim, like anyone else, of a negative recency bias. And that's the problem with the game, is that we leave the golf course. And that's one of the reasons I think Tim and our other friend Kent, and you, I'm assuming, recommend journaling, or at least on MindCaddy. You can kind of get a realistic snapshot of what just happened. Because, a lot of our angst as golfers comes from not recognizing that on any given shot, it lips in or lips out, and you're a good person, you're a winner, just based on the vagaries of the game, the variance of the game. But looking at it realistically, that recency or that negative, which is what most people do, is one of the reasons we're all so aggravated by it, because we don't remember our great shots. We seem to remember our bad ones and color our whole round by that.
We're basically battling our brain, Howard, in the sense that, and this was explained to me a number of years ago by a neuroscientist. He said, we're hardwired. Think of it like this. He used 2 words. The 2 words he used were Teflon and Velcro. And he said, for experiences, we were looking at golf, the good stuff slips away like food on a Teflon pan. But the bad stuff, we hang on to it like Velcro, because that's our brain. Our brain is designed primarily for survival. Number one thing that your brain is trying to do is keep us here and survive. Now, when we roamed around in caves, what was it important to remember at the end of the day? Was it important to remember the songs around the campfire, or was it important to remember where the saber-toothed tiger was roaming around? And, that kind of mechanism is way out of date now in the modern world, but that's still how it operates, unless, to your point, and to what Tim suggested in his book and stuff I've written over the years, unless you do something about it, that's the default mode of our brain. That's why getting a journal and writing your 3 best shots after the round is not only a good exercise in and of itself because it's pleasurable, it's actually kind of balancing out to a degree the natural bias for negativity.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, I learned that phrase from you, anchoring. And I'll never forget, I years and years ago, Fred Couples in the Canadian Open, I said, Fred, when you're under pressure and if you have a shot, what do you do? And he says, I think about the best shot I ever hit with the club I have in my hand. Freddie, I mean, he just had such a great approach, but he just looks at what are the good things that happen. But yeah, it's really interesting to see how we get caught in the stories. And anyways, so good to see you again, sir.
Let's tell everyone to go check out Karl Morris, MindCaddy, and of course the broadcast that is you've been doing this now for quite a while, the Brain Booster podcast.
Oh, it's called the MindCaddy. We had a rebrand.
Oh, the
rebrand. That's right.
Rebrand. I'm sorry, MindCaddy, and it's also MindCaddy's the name of the app Go check it out wherever you get your apps. And Karl, always great catching up with you. Great having dinner with you, my friend.
No, it was a special night. Really enjoyed it. I'll have to get you over this side of the pond and have dinner over in the UK.
I'd love it. Thank you, my friend. There's Karl Morris. Just let yourself out, and we'll be in touch. The podcast, I did know that. It's called Mind Caddy now, and of course, that's the name of the app. All right, Karl, there he is going. Yeah, he's a good guy. Is he have we had him on the most? Is he the most frequent guest we've ever had?
I think by far. He's friend of show, platinum
Hall
level.
of Fame. He's platinum.
Yeah.
Hall of Fame. But that is so true, though. I wanted to just finish off with that idea of the negative recency bias.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about that. We were texting back and forth about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's why I sent you those scores.
Yeah.
Because I realized, and I think it's a good little. We'll just do a quick discussion, you and I, and then we'll wrap this thing up. But I think that's very important. That notion that most golfers, my brother, my friends, when they have a bad round, they feel like, or we feel like it's been nothing but bad because we don't remember. I don't know what that is. Like, again, Kent and I are joking about all the chaos that we've experienced this spring, and I feel like, a couple weeks ago, if you'd asked me how I was playing, I would have said kind of shitty, but because of a couple of important rounds. I had a bad qualifier. I didn't play particularly well in a couple of big events. But then I look at the scores I've been shooting around those. I've had some good events and some pretty low scores. And so I decided that to send it to you just so we could have this discussion of the idea that in reality, if you do look at your rounds, objectively, and your trends objectively, in my case, it's been pretty good, It's better than I would have thought it was. That's right. I just went back and I'm like, it hasn't all been, a horror show. There's been a lot of good rounds in there.
Yeah, absolutely. But man, it's almost impossible to maintain that perspective that, overall, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because we just get caught in these stories. And, Karl and I have been talking about, like, it was funny when I met him. I think we talked about this on the show. I think I met him in 2008 in person, but I'd been listening to him for 5 years before that. And one of the things that I always connected with him, and this connects to, I think, with the men's work I've done with the Mankind Project, is the stories that we have and the messages we have about ourselves. I love how he said BS, which I believe stands for beliefs and stories.
Mm-hmm.
We listen to our own BS, and we get caught in that. We get a trigger, and it comes back again to what he also said about our brain's number one job is keep us alive.
Mm-hmm.
And it always has that negative bias because that at one stage was important for us to keep us alive. So it's just so easy to get triggered, go down this little rabbit hole, and there I am again. I can't do this, and why am I bothering? That kind of thing. And again, it's how do we get out of that? It was just the awareness that we're in it. Really, it's just I'm doing that effing thing again.
I don't keep stats the way I did in a couple of years ago when I was entering.
Decading.
Well, and I mean I do to a degree. I was going to say that I don't do it to the degree I did because I found it distracting at some point. It was like homework. But yes. I do keep stats, basic stats on most rounds, mainly for perspective. Like if I was thinking, I'm really not putting that well. And then I, look back at the last few rounds and the scores I've shot. Well, I'm actually putting pretty well. Better than I would have thought. I always hit a pretty decent amount of greens. But, I have identified that there are some things I can work on. And it's not hitting drivers and shots from the fairway. A lot of it is just, working on my short game. Because I give you an example. I played around recently, a couple days ago, and I hit 15 greens in regulation, which is a lot.
Yeah.
And I shot 73, which is a good score. But it's not it's not a great score for 15 greens in regulation. So what I wanted to go work on is some of the shots around the greens that are becoming a little bit sloppy and I'm not quite organized, etc. But that gives me something that is real. Like I can say, oh yeah, over the last few rounds I've hit a ton of greens in regulation. I just haven't gotten up. Now part of it is, I know that as a golfer, that sometimes when you're on a lot of greens, you don't have a lot of, on a day you hit 10 greens, you have a lot of opportunities to try and get it up and down. So you tend to maybe do a little bit better because you're sort of forced to, whereas I've been playing pretty, you'd love this. I've been playing very boring golf. A lot of fairways, a lot of greens, not a lot of chaos, not a lot of tens. I miss those days.
I think that's why some people who watch golf go, okay, you hit it and then you walk.
That's
you
right.
hit it again. And if they hit it in the middle of the fairway all the time, I mean, as a golf nerds will go, oh my God, he just keeps splitting the fairway. That's incredible. But if you don't know golf, it's like, yeah, so aren't you supposed to do that?
Yeah. Well, that's what Paul, my coach Paul always says, like, that like when you're playing well or you're with somebody who's really playing well, the round isn't very eventful. Like the rounds where I struggle, like I have a high front nine or I play really well in the back, whatever, those rounds are very chaotic and they seem almost exciting. Whereas, I played with our buddy KO the other day and we were both good. But, he shot 73, I shot 74. We weren't looking for a lot of balls. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, I got it. It was more like, okay, I'll see you over there. I'm going to go over here. And
Yeah.
But that idea, and I'm glad we finished with Karl on the idea of the negative recency bias, because I think that really, it does with me and it does with a lot of golfers, where we assess ourselves, the round, the shot, the hole, based on, and again, he makes a great point about why we do that is for survival. But if you don't do something to interject it and interrupt it, it can affect the rest of the day and, of course, affect the way you feel about yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And a thing I've been thinking about a lot recently is just how we just get caught in this stuff in our heads, our thoughts, which really are not real. It's just we're not responding to the real world. So, if you look at sort of our behaviors, how we've been interacting with people, think, oh, I'm such a loser. I can't believe I've been doing this. And then you talk to a friend and go like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? That's just like, it's crazy. But because we get caught up in our own nonsense and our own head and our delusions, and again, back to the BS. And, what's the way out? There's no miracle cure. I mean, you could pour alcohol in it. That doesn't work. You could do other things, but it's the awareness. Oh, damn it. I'm in this again. And that is just kind of how you start working your way out, is the awareness that you're in it. And, it comes back to, here's our probably third or fourth reference to Fred Shoemaker. Awareness is curative.
Yeah. Awareness is curative in all things. Tim O'Connor's book, Getting Unstuck, available. Very interesting O'Connor news. I won't reveal what it is, but it's our conversation of the other day. I'm very excited for you to do that. The book is available on Amazon. Also, Tim's Substack is available, where Substacks are available. The Humble and Fred Show, available where all fine podcasts are disseminated. And we're off this week, so I felt completely different. I usually do the Humble and Fred Show, then I have like a 15-minute break, then we do this, and I'm all burned out. Now I'm like, let's just keep going. And Tim continues to instruct and advise and coach, and you get a hold of him there. And I continue to flail away. Tournament, I had a little bit of a break. I had about a month, almost 4.5 weeks, where I had 5 tournament rounds, or 4 or 5 tournament rounds a week. And the last week or so has just been kind of relaxed and very nice. And I get kind of cranked up again next week for a couple of events. But yeah, it's been good. It's been nice. It's been a nice, I feel like a nice, I'm going to the golf course, and we've talked about this, and it's a Karl Morris concept of seeing the golf course as a threatening environment.
Oh,
But
yeah.
the last few weeks, it's felt completely like benign. Like, I'm going to the course today. I'm playing with a couple of really good players, and I'm looking forward to it. And I'm not really concerned about, will I be able to play well or not? You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah, but I get it, because on the connection I'll make is that on this Sunday, I'm going to go play St. Thomas Golf and Country Club, which is one of my favorites.
Love the place.
And I was fortunate to know it pretty well through I caddied for my dad there 1,000 years ago. When I coached the University of Guelph golf team, we always had the Western Invitational there. And then I've played in, I think it's 3 early birds. But I'm going to play on Sunday, and it's just going to be fun because that night I'm giving a talk. The member guest is Monday and Tuesday. So I'm giving a talk to their opening dinner on Mo Norman, and that'll really be fun. So it'll be fun it'll be the whole freaking day event will be a lot of fun. But to be able to go and play St. Thomas and not to worry about my score or what am I going to tell Howard or Ronan what I shot?
That's right. Hey, I talked to somebody. I ran into one of the participants at your most recent workshop. I think it was the
Would that be Manny?
Manny, my
Yeah,
boy
yeah.
Manny. He was very excited. Hey, Manny, I heard you were at an O'Connor event, and he said he learned a lot. He had a great time, and I would recommend it highly to others that want to have the same experience. All right, kids. Karl Morris, that was awesome, and go check out the Mind Caddy podcast. Coming up, we got a couple of cool guests. Tim and I are going to be on Sirius XM on, when is that? It's going to the 20th of July. We'll tell you more about that in the coming weeks. We're going to be guesting on, who's the person's show we're going to guest on?
Debbie O'Connell.
Debbie O'Connell. Fantastic. And then we're having her on our show. And I sent you a note about that particular amateur golfer. What do you think? We should try and get him on.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that would be fun talking about Garrett Rank.
No, I'm talking about Dave Bunker.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm sorry.
I just think Dave's more relatable to the age of our audience. Garrett
I think you're
Rank,
right. Yes.
I mean, Garrett's
Absolutely.
great, and I've hung out with Garrett. I told you I saw him just a few weeks ago. Garrett plays golf like a tour player. Now
Yes.
Dave Bunker plays golf like a tour player, but he's a guy in his 50s, probably late 50s now. He's easily the best senior amateur in Canada. Just played in the U.S. Senior Open, like the professional one.
Wow.
Missed the cut, but had a couple of nice scores. And I think, I've been in, I don't know Dave. I know a lot of people that do. And I've been in some tournaments with him. I've, said hi to him on the range at events, but he's in a different category than I am. But he isn't I've always been fascinated by this guy because he's like a professional amateur. And
Yeah.
I was just curious, like, how he got to be as good as he is. And what is it like? What does he know about competition that, say, I don't? And I think he'll have a lot of great insights if he chooses to do the show.
Oh, hopefully he does. Yes.
Well, I hope he does too. All right, everybody, there you have another episode of Swing Thoughts, which we recorded all in its entirety. Very excited about that. We're back next week. Tim O'Connor, always a pleasure.
You too, sir.
This program is baked fresh every week by the Humble and Fred Radio podcast network, and we'll see you next time.
Sound of the river, you stop and you hold